My name's Garen Pinlan, and on this channel, we are going to be exploring New York City while discussing philosophical concepts. We're going to be doing street interviews, we're going to be interviewing Ivy League students, we're going to be debating people, we're going to be doing all sorts of philosophical related things while, seeing the beautiful city. But in today's video, we actually have something very exciting. I had the opportunity to speak with Cliffe and Knechtle. If you don't know who they are Christian apologists and authors and speakers, activists, whatever you want to call them. And we had some pretty interesting discussions, so we're going to go ahead and get into those right now.
I appreciate it. I'm Cliff.
My name's Garen. Nice to meet you, sir.
Garen?
Garen, yeah. I actually watch a lot of your stuff sometimes.
Sorry to hear that.
You pop up. You pop up on my TikTok. I also saw your debate with Alex O'Connor, or like your discussion.
He's an awful nice guy.
Yeah, no, I love this.
Alex is a
awesome
great guy.
Conversation.
He's brilliant.
Oh yeah, he is.
He's
yeah.
an Oxford grad.
He inspired me to study philosophy, actually.
Did he?
Yeah. As well as you guys, you and your son.
Oh, great.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess my question is, do you think that an omnipotent God is a contradiction to human free will, knowing that he set the conditions of the universe long before humanity entered the picture?
Yep.
And if he can see the past, present, and future simultaneously, then he knows when he sets those conditions in place. Theoretically, he would know who would go to heaven or hell right when he sets those conditions.
Right. Okay. Very hard question. I am convinced that it's totally possible for an all-powerful God to partially limit his power by giving us a free will. And that's what I think happened. Yes, God is all-powerful, but God is capable of limiting his power.
Yes, sir.
By giving us a free will. Obviously, the incarnation of Christ is another example. God limited himself, became a human being in Jesus of Nazareth. So it's the whole principle of the self-limitation of God.
Yes, sir. So the idea is, like, he sort of limited his own knowledge so that he wouldn't know when he set the conditions who would be
No, he didn't limit his knowledge.
Okay.
But he limited his power in that I can hold back and hit you as hard as I can. And if I say to you, God made me do it, I'm a liar.
Okay.
I did not have to hit you.
Right.
I chose to.
I guess the idea is, we agree that God created the universe as it currently exists, correct?
No.
No, we don't? Okay.
No.
Could you explain to me sort of that?
When you read Genesis 1 and 2, and you read about the Garden of Eden, there's no evil. In terms of human evil.
Right.
Right? So God creates a beautiful world populated by beings like Lucifer and like human beings who can rebel against God. And that's where the train gets off the track.
I see.
That's where chaos erupts.
I guess the idea is, though, is that when he sets up these conditions of the Garden of Eden,
yes,
you would say that he did not have he did not know that those humans would make that specific
he knew
choice. Right. So then my idea is that if he set up the condition with the knowledge that they would make that choice, did they really make the choice, or did he make the choice by setting up that initial condition that led to that choice?
Right. And I would argue, see, it's very similar to what we were talking about earlier there.
And I apologize if it's a repetition.
No. Stop it. You're great, all right? Now just keep going, all right?
Yes, sir.
See, it's this whole issue of God limiting his power, giving us a free will. Is that real or not? And then the second point is, God knows what's going to happen tomorrow. Not because he's written it on a piece of paper. He set up all the conditions, and then I have to do what he programmed me to do tomorrow. No, he knows because his perspective is radically different. He's outside of the dimension of time. I live in terms of this wristwatch. 5 minutes ago, now, 5 minutes from now, because I'm locked in the dimension of time. God is outside of that dimension of time, lives in the eternal now, sees past, present, and future at a single glance.
Yes, sir.
So God knows what I'm going to freely choose to do and what you're going to freely choose to do tomorrow. He knows that now.
I see.
In what you and I would call now.
But for him, it's not now.
It's not. Well, it's more complex. It's past, present, and future all in one. See, because the Bible teaches he's eternal, which means he's outside of that dimension of time. I'm not. That's why I don't understand what I'm saying to you.
Right. And I also have two more questions. That's okay. Then I'll let someone else.
No, but make a point.
Okay, cool.
Disagree with me. Show me where I'm wrong.
Okay. So the other question, Alex O'Connor actually brought this up to you,
yes,
but I want to hear your response, fully. So it's the idea of so I understand with human suffering, right? There could be some sort of justification, it helps with moral development, or maybe you had to have this happen to you because it makes you a better person in the future. I can totally get behind that.
Okay.
But what about non-human, like animal suffering before humans entered the picture. Right?
Yes.
If we agree, I don't know if we agree on this actually. I think evolution is the mechanism through which humans came to be.
Sure.
If evolution is the mechanism
Yeah.
influenced by God, as like
Yeah.
intelligent design would suggest,
Right.
why choose such a violent mechanism that led to like countless suffering for non-human animals? I think that you could have had like a similar mechanism without that suffering. Why choose that if it's an all-good God, all-loving God?
You bet.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm totally open to evolution as a process, not as an origin.
Right.
Right? Okay, now, to what extent did God use evolution? I do not know. Okay? But I do know that God is good. I do know that God created animals with an innate value, not the same value as we have as human beings.
Of course.
Big difference between me stepping on a cockroach and me stepping on you.
Yeah.
Big difference. And cockroach is still valuable, but not as valuable as you. I can eat a hamburger, I better not eat a human burger.
Yeah, okay.
Fair enough? Because God created humans in his image, and the cow is not in his image. Okay. So, ultimately, I don't know how God created. So I don't know if God used evolution pre-fall to create. I do know that the fall messed things up big time, but I don't know, because the Bible doesn't answer the question, so I just turn to science. I don't know how God created.
I see. I guess more or less the question, even beyond evolution, like we could say like right now in nature,
Yes.
there's like non-human animal suffering. And the question would be like, if there's an all-loving, all-good God, why would that exist? What would be like the necessity for that to exist?
Oh,
Because
well,
once again, for like human suffering,
yeah.
there's of course, there could be argued some sort of end. Like maybe I don't know, like let's come up with an example. Like let's say I like lost my mother or something.
Yeah.
Sorry if anybody's lost their mother. If somebody's lost their mother, for
Yeah.
example, you could say, well, I needed that to happen at that time because it helped me develop into a better person. There could be an argument for that.
Yeah.
But for like animals, you can't really make that argument because they don't really have the same level of consciousness or the self-reflective ability that humans do. So any like suffering that an animal experiences would just seem sort of meaningless from, I guess, someone who doesn't understand the mechanism through which they created it. Like I guess the argument could be made, who am I to question God's mechanism, because maybe there is a reason, I just don't see it. But what would your response be to that?
My response to that would be, not only do I not know the reason, I'm not sure there is one. Because when we rebel against God, chaos erupts. For instance, my younger brother, who's a transplant surgeon down at Duke, he lost his only daughter when she was 7 in a horrible car wreck.
I'm very sorry to hear that.
Thank you, Gary. So, believe me, it was painful as all get out. Now, he says to me, Cliff, I don't understand why God allowed that to happen, and I'm not sure I ever will, because I'm not sure there's a solid reason. If the babysitter didn't see the stop sign, went right through the stop sign, and then the pickup truck at 55 miles an hour hits her broadside and kills her instantly. And I think he's right. I don't think that we can say that there's always a reason for everything, because I really think there's a degree of chaos in this world. And that's right. I get really honked off at people who say, well, that tragedy occurred because God is judging those people. You don't know that. And Jesus doesn't teach that. Yes, sin leads to death. Sin is destructive. But there are tragedies that occur that are not God judging somebody. Does that make any sense?
That makes perfect sense. But I guess the original point, though, if we agree that evolution is the mechanism, then we would agree that animals predated humans. So how could we? Alex O'Connor made this point as well. Sorry to regurgitate it.
No, it's all right.
I really am curious of your answer.
Yeah.
But if animals predated humans, then how could humans be the cause? Like the fall of man be the cause of that animal suffering?
Yes.
Would it be because he exists outside time, so there's no?
No. I think I lean towards believing Adam and Eve were not the first personal beings to rebel against God. Obviously, Lucifer rebelled against God. Before then, the Bible is silent on so much of this stuff.
Yes, sir.
That I don't turn to the Bible for those answers. I turn to science to answer more of those questions.
Perfect. And the very last question that I had was, do you think that objective morality is necessary to condemn evil actions?
If you're going to act as if evil is real, objectively true, then yes, there have to be moral absolutes. And I would argue in order for there to be moral absolutes, there's got to be a mind prior to the human mind that creates and defines those objective morals. Cement has no ability to understand morality.
Right.
It takes a mind. Well, if good and evil, if there is no mind prior to the human mind, then it's obviously the human mind that creates right and wrong, which means it's all relative depending upon which human you're talking to.
Correct.
Does that make sense?
Yes, but my question was, do you think that it actually poses a practical problem if there is subjective morality? And let me elaborate on that point.
Yeah, good.
Because I think the number one argument that I hear a lot would be like, well, then how can you actually like condemn all these evil things like the Holocaust or all of that? If there's no objective morality, how can you say that they're actually wrong? And to me, it's like, well, I can't say necessarily that it's like it's not grounded in any objectivity because you would need God for that. But I can say I subjectively think that that's wrong and I think it's evil. And I think I could convince people of that point through logic and reasoning. I don't think it necessarily has to be grounded in something outside of humanity.
But isn't the Holocaust wrong because human beings have innate value and to gas people to death is absolutely evil?
Yes, but I would argue that from my subjective understanding of human worth. I wouldn't say that there's like, because once again, you fall into the trap of you would have to find something to objectively link it to.
Yeah.
And I would agree that you would need something like God for that. Yeah. But you have to understand from a viewpoint of like an agnostic or like someone who isn't necessarily fully convinced that God exists. Yeah. How can I like be sure that like my moral assertions are like good? I mean, there's not really a grounding for it, but I think I could subjectively articulate to you why human being is valuable.
Yeah, you
and
can do
I think
that.
I can convince people, and I don't think it would necessarily pose a practical issue.
Right. Okay, but here's my point. My point is, if you create justice, you acknowledge it's totally subjective, it's just a bias, it's just a taste. Right? Which means if next week you jettison that definition and adopt the opposite, you're not wrong. You're not right, because it's all relative. So today I might say that holding back and punching her in the face is wrong. But because I realize morality is relative, I realize that's just my opinion. And if next week I say punching her in the face is good, I'm just as right next week as I am today. And my point is, I can't live that out. And guess what? None of my atheist friends do. None of my agnostic friends do. All of my atheist and agnostic friends, when I hurt them by fouling them a hard foul on the basketball court, you should not have done that, Cliff.
Right.
And I'm saying, what do you mean should not? If everything's relative, it doesn't matter what I do to you, fouling you as hard as I can. It's all relative. And if I lose my temper with you, so be it.
Right.
And if I slam you against the wall, so be it. It's all relative. But if you have an intrinsic value that comes from the fact that God created you, it is absolutely evil for me to dehumanize, denigrate you in any way. And that is the way all of my nice, good atheist friends live their lives. And my point to my good atheist friends is, you're contradicting yourself. You can't live out your worldview. So if you can't live out your worldview, don't you think you should go back and question whether your worldview is accurate?
Sure. I guess like when you use that example, it sort of makes it seem like it's more like on a whim, like whether or not I'm going to decide this is right in this moment or wrong in this moment. What I'm saying is that you come to a fundamental conclusion through rationality. And you might derive some sort of universal like axiom, for example, like hurting other people is wrong. Right. Like you could just have that axiom. Yeah. And then you make individual choices based on that axiom. Like I would not hit her because I've come to the rational decision that harming people is wrong or you shouldn't hurt people in general. Yeah. And I don't think that that is necessarily subject to like a whim. Like I think that takes years and years of lived experience and rationality to come to that conclusion, and it wouldn't just be shaken like moment to moment. I guess it's like sort of my thing. Yeah. Do you think the Nazis were pretty intelligent? I have no way of knowing that. I don't know Nazis. Those Nazi Germans were very educated, very intelligent people. Committed some of the most horrible evil imaginable. So, what you're saying is, my rational powers tell me that what they did was wrong. Their rational powers told them that what they did is right. I'm correct and they're incorrect? Is that what you're saying? I would say that, but I would say it's because, like I was saying earlier, the reason I don't think it poses a practical problem is because I can go through the means of articulating why it's wrong and convince people that it's wrong, and then establish systems to hold them accountable, which we did. Like, that's why I don't necessarily think it's like a practical problem. Just because it's uneasy that a morality might not be objective, doesn't mean, like, just because it's not easy doesn't mean it can't be the case, is like my thing.
All right, then let's talk about the Nuremberg trials. Those Nazi officers had brilliant lawyers. The lawyers stood up in the court in the Nuremberg trials and said, these officers were just carrying out what their superiors told them to do at Dachau, Auschwitz, Buchenwald, and wherever. Certainly, you allies are not going to come from a different culture into this Nazi culture and tell them that what they did was wrong. And the Nuremberg trials shut down. Those were brilliant Nazi lawyers. And then Robert Jackson, the American consul, stood up and said, wait a second, I am convinced there is a law above culture that says slaughtering people is evil. Therefore, what those Nazis did was absolutely evil. I don't care what their culture told them. And the Nuremberg trials kicked back in, which is no different from the letter from the Birmingham jail. As Dr. Martin Luther King argues, I don't care how the great state of Alabama justifies segregation. There is a law above the law of the great state of Alabama. And according to that law, segregation is evil. Bravo, Dr. King. You're spot on. Who am I from my culture to tell you that your culture is wrong? That's cultural elitism. But if there is a God who defines justice, then I don't care what my culture says, I don't care what your culture says. It's not our culture that defines ultimately right and wrong, justice and injustice. Now, I'm pleading with your conscience that informs you, yeah, Cliff, that's correct view of reality. Cultural relativism does not win the day, because it's still relative. I don't care how smart you are, how much time you spent working it through, all the experience you've had, it's still your taste versus my taste. It's all relative.
It's true. But do you think that that poses a problem? Like, do you think that just because it's relative, that means that it can't be the case? Like, for example, let's say that there is a problem. Let's say we could agree that there is a problem with it. Do you think that means that that can't be the case, though? Like, do you think that necessarily means there must be a God to give moral objective laws? Or could it just be the case that it is subjective and it's not perfect, but that's just how the world exists?
I'm appealing to the way you live your life. I don't think you can live out moral relativism consistently.
I think I do.
Impossible. No, I don't agree with you.
I think I condemn the actions of the Nazis, not based on some objective law that I'm subscribed to, but just based on my own rational faculties to say, I think you should limit human suffering when possible. I'm not like a full utilitarian, for example, but I mean, I think as a general metric, you should probably try to limit human suffering when you can.
Okay, let me put it real bluntly. I think every atheistic altruist at Columbia is living off the fumes of the Judeo-Christian worldview that says there is a just God who created us in his image with a conscience and a rational mind, and we know very, very well that slavery is evil, that the gassing of Jews is evil, that a thug is a thug, I don't care what their ethnic heritage is, because we're convinced that there are objective morals. I think, therefore, we all at times experience guilt, because we know, every one of us, I certainly know, that I have done evil at times. It's pretty sophisticated, my evil, and I'm confident that your evil here at Columbia is very sophisticated. I don't think you're robbing banks. I don't think there's a lot of racism going on in terms of slavery. Okay? But there is sophisticated evil at Columbia, the same way I participated in sophisticated evil, okay? Well, why is that? It's because we can't live out our moral relativism. What, brother? We've run it out of time. You bet. Guys, this has been an honor to talk with you. We've run out of time. I cannot thank the university and you guys enough.
Thank you very much,
thank you so much for talking with me.
I loved our conversation.
It took a while. All right, Stu and I will be out here again tomorrow, beginning at noon. Thank you for your attention. Have a great night.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Because for me, it's like I'm an agnostic, so I'm like, I don't know which one of these I should go with.
I don't think you're an agnostic. I think your smile is too big to be an agnostic.
I enjoyed these conversations a lot. I'm a fan of you guys. So.
I think you're a Christian agnostic.